Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. Today I am thrilled to have truly a leader in the world of entrepreneurship, of startups, of technology, Mr. Simcha Gluck, who is living now in the land of Israel, having celebrated his 10-year Aliyah anniversary. He is the co-founder of the FreshBiz game, which I have personally played and absolutely loved and completely. Like when I started this game, I was like, what is this nonsense? And by the end, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I would be one of those raving fans, and also author of the fantastic book, The New Entrepreneurz, with a Z at the end. As I told Simcha, I would hold up my copy of it, but it was so good I actually gave it away, as I have done with most of my good books. So hopefully you have a copy that you'll be able to hold up and share with the people. So very excited. Simcha, thank you very much for joining me on the program today. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me today too.
My pleasure. Thank you. So Simcha, you have a very unique story. I know it says, 10,000 hours of self-development. So how does a young Jewish man growing up in Long Island, New York, wind up in the land of Israel at the head of the startup revolution in the startup nation?
That's an awesome question, my friend. I would answer like this. So I've been here now for 10 years. I grew up in Cedarhurst, Long Island in New York. Pretty standard Jewish education, going the yeshiva route, going to Israel for the year, coming back, going to Queens College. I wound up actually meeting my wife, Rachel, when I was in Queens College. It was Rachel's summer break. So Rachel actually loved Israel so much that she, after her year of Israel, went back to Bar Ilan University. And I actually met her in a karaoke bar in the village. A whole bunch of my friends and a whole bunch of her friends went out for the night. I'm a musician, I'm a singer, a guitar player, so you better believe that I was singing some karaoke that night. And and Rachel and I met each other, and man, that girl was so amazing. I wound up hearing that she had one of the interesting jobs I've ever heard of in my life. It was so crazy. Rachel basically explained to me that she works for Cutco. In other words, she sells knives in people's houses. I'm like, I've never heard of that. I'm in Queens College. They never put that out there like a position that you can get training for.
That was not a major. Probably not a major.
That was not a major. Definitely not a major. Not even a minor, some might say. Anyways, I found it fascinating, and I'll never forget. I went with Rachel. It was maybe one of our first couple of dates. I went with her on one of her demos, one of her presentations, where Rachel basically through referrals and word of mouth got to someone's house to show them Cutco knives. And I watched Rachel basically do the best presentation I've ever seen ever. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, holy cow, this is someone with a good skill set. But I watched Rachel sell about $1,000 of product line to this family, and I was blown away. I go, wow. As we're leaving, as we were already outside, I go, how much do you make? 5%, 10%? And Rachel's like, 50%. I'm like, lunch is on you, and hook a brother up. So we went out to lunch, and Rachel's like, yeah, I'll explain to you how it works. And I wound up having the weirdest job I've ever had in my life, where I was an independent sales rep basically for Cutco. And Rachel and I, sure enough, we literally worked there for 3.5 years, paying our way through Queens College. We got college credit for doing so because of the incredible sales training and closing and negotiations and appointment setting. It was like a whole world that none of my other college friends at that moment really had, that I had. It was like this weird sort of thing that I was doing as an Orthodox Jewish guy. My wife and I, everyone else at that point, because we were young and married, I was 22, Rachel was 20. Everyone was in law school or medical school, and maybe a few other things along the way.
Right. So out of curiosity, was this something that, besides the fact that you were obviously, thank God, infatuated with your wife, was being a salesman and all of these business principles and the concepts of closing and selling and setting appointments and offering value, was this part of how you were growing up, or was this sort of a new skill set that the love you had for a woman kind of led you into?
Yeah, I would say the second one, because really, to be honest, at that moment, I had a lot of stuff in my head, a lot of baggage. I grew up, I was bullied as a young kid, and I wound up developing a really bad stutter. So for me, the idea of presenting or talking in public or things like that, that was like very difficult. That was new. That was challenging. It was through sort of the realm of personal development and really doing transformative work that I let go of a lot of the old baggage in my head. And all of a sudden speech started to flow naturally, which was interesting. So at least back then, that was not easy for me. I like people, but the idea of like, you know, being there, presenting, sales, understanding people, getting it, like that was a different world for me.
My deepest fear of this conversation was that we'll never actually get to the part where you move to the land of Israel, because there's a lot of things that just kind of popped up that I might want to stop you on, but that's okay. We'll go where it goes. In terms of your insights into personal development, at what point did you start to get into that world, and who really stood out as an influence to you in the beginning?
Yeah, so I was really getting there anyways, which was that at that moment on, you know, when we graduated, we basically started running an office for the company. We had 500 student sales reps working for us every year, and we'd be going to we'd be going at least 10 to 20 seminars every year. Every year, but it was literally all about sales development and closing and techniques and all this type of stuff, marketing ability, whatever. And it was really only towards the very end of being there. We ran an office for about 3 years. So in total, about 7 years that I basically worked for that company, that one of our manager friends, his name was Joey Gianelli. Okay. And he said to us, he's like, "Oh my God, I just did this weekend transformational workshop. You guys got to do it. You'll make more money. It's going to change your life." And as someone growing up in New York, pretty much like my only barometer for any aspect of success was really at that time, how much money you made, right? That was it. I had no other sort of really metric, if you will. I'm like, we'll do it. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, we actually wound up putting ourselves into the Landmark Forum, Landmark Education in New York City. We actually did it with a bunch of Aish rabbis that were so cool. It was such an amazing Shabbat. I'm not even going to get to like Parshat HaShavua and Divrei Torah that we told along the way through this whole journey. It was just crazy. But that wound up being basically the first thing that I ever did, not to get better at sales or closing, but just to just be a better human, be a better Jew, be a better person. And it was so transformative, Jacob, that Rachel and I wound up doing their entire curriculum for living, you know, literally the forum, the advanced course, the self-expression leadership program. I never heard of coaching before until I actually had a coach for 3 months that was life-changing and held me accountable and like really made me step up. And if I said X, like he was there to make sure that X happened by Simcha. And if it didn't, there was a really good reason or story that we were going to break through together in terms of why not. That I wound up actually going back and coaching the self-expression leadership program in Landmark for 3 months alongside my coach. And that's when I got like, I'm like, okay, I am into coaching. I'm into transformation for the Jewish people, for the world. And literally within about a year, we went up doing over $1 million in sales, and then really understanding that if life is right now, we're going to live the authentic sort of Jewish experience, at least for us in that moment in Israel. Sold our house, business, cars. Within 12 months, you know, we were out. So that's sort of getting into the world of personal development, let's say through Landmark. But since then, and there's so many people in that space. I mean, so many people from, of course, there's a Tony Robbins. Of course, you have, you know, the world of Richard Branson. You have the world of Jim Rohn and Deepak Chopra. And I would just say that I have a lot of Rebbes out there in the not Jewish world, let's say, of personal development, because really there's so many nuggets that all come back to, of course, to basic Jewish principles that we've always had.
So for me, that was something that was so impactful when you realize that these, you know, I don't know if truths are out there and they're being spoken about. And I guess kind of turning around and coming back from the other side saying, you know, like a lot of us in our Jewish practice, and it's a major area of concern in my life, I'm sure in yours as well, is that people look at Judaism and they feel that it is not speaking to them or it's not helping them. And there's this huge push, and there's, you know, millions of dollars being poured into on all spectrums of the Jewish scale. How do you make Judaism relevant? And then for me, I say, well, there's also this, you know, billion-dollar industry of coaching and development, and the principles that they're sharing, we've been saying that for thousands of years. And like, how do you kind of come from, you know, the outside world to show that that's kind of within our structure as well? So like, was that something that fueled you, or did you see them as somewhat, you know, separate?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple things about it. One, I'm just going to say that the idea of how do we make Judaism relevant today, for me, the question is, how could we ever make Judaism not relevant today? I mean, I'm just so fascinated by it. We're clearly doing something wrong. Matter of fact, the principles of the Torah have actually never before been more relevant than nowadays in 2017 where we have all new maps and metaphors and understandings that we can actually understand what the real deep teachings of the Kabbalah and everything else has been talking about for years. Now we can actually understand that stuff. But what I would just say is, yeah, you know, in the very beginning, look, think about how schools raise us. You know, schools raise us where this is a box and then this is a box. It's like first there's English and then there's social studies and then there's math, and nobody ever hyperlinks them together like how we are actually used to searching on the internet and how we're actually used to learning. Nobody puts it all together. Nobody basically learns math through social studies and learns Torah through, nobody does that. And at least they're starting to, maybe nowadays, right? They're starting to make schools a lot more experiential and a lot more engaging. So definitely I grew up in a box era where everything was its own little box. So self-development was its own little box, and Judaism was its own little box. And of course, you know, the little box of Judaism was a little bit antiquated, if you will, you know, because unfortunately nobody was really, so I'm with you on that. I would say it was really just more of the more I understood and really the deeper I got into the world of self-development, I started understanding Jewish concepts way more powerfully. Hashem is the creator. Hashem spoke into existence. I mean, this is basically Bereshit 101. And of course, if what we speak into existence becomes a creation, then the idea of Lashon Hara is like, oh my God, don't ever do Lashon Hara. Me and Rachel got so strict about our not speaking Lashon Hara. Wherever we went, if anybody was speaking it, we were either out or asking them to be out, because there was no way that we were going to be a part of creating sort of people in a way that was sheker and was wrong and was bad and really misjudged. So I'm not coming from a podium. I'm just sharing with you that sort of a lot of these concepts really unlocked concepts that were already in my head or already ideas in Judaism and in the Torah, but it gave me sort of a three-dimensional perspective on it where it wasn't there beforehand.
So to speak out the idea for those of us that might not be so up to date on the Hebrew, the idea was that God created the world through his speech, and so words have the power of actually taking on a physical manifestation. So and again, in the self-help world is very much into this idea of what are the stories that you're telling yourself, what's the language that you're using. Tony Robbins has tons on that. But the idea was if God is literally turning physicality out of the words that he's saying, so then this major prohibition in Judaism against speaking bad about other people, it's not just about having fun or, you know, being negative, but you're literally bringing negativity into the world. And that's why you said, so for you and your wife, you guys right away jumped on that and said, we're not going to be a part of that because we don't want to be manifesting our own negativity surrounding us and surrounding other people. That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. I would even just say a different answer, which is we just didn't want to create people in the worst possible way when it's just like, you know, just going back to what we were saying, which is what's fascinating. And this is Bereshit, Genesis 101. It says that we're created in God's image, you know, B'Tselem Elohim. And a couple of cool things about that. We're definitely created in God's image, and the fact that just like God speaks into existence, we also speak into existence. I think what's fascinating is the fact that God didn't have to tell us that we were created in his image. It could just be. But the fact that he even let us know that we're created in his image just goes to show us what's like, wow, thank you for even telling me that. So now I can't possibly imagine, but at least I can start to pursue and then bring into my own sort of consciousness what that looks like, what that means, and really view God as a role model. So that just really came down to, I think, a lot of how we viewed, languaging and the words. I like what you said. Tony Robbins is very much about this, which is pretty much your life comes down to two things. You know, the one, who you surround yourself with, and two, the conversation that those people are having with each other and you. So the moment you attract and you hang out with good quality people having also two good quality conversations, you equaling a good life. That's it. So that became really important to me and Rachel. It was like very much about where we spend our time, who are our friends, what's going on. Nothing too crazy, nothing too whatever the case. You know, every now and again, people say to me, they go, Simcha, I feel like you've done a lot of things that most people would call a cult. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess that's interesting. I mean, Judaism is probably Judaism is a cult, I guess, if you want to call it like that. So I guess I do other things that are very similar that have their own culture around it. But, you know, I sort of view it in a really good way, and I joke about it, but yeah.
So at some point you're going to get to completely redefining this concept of a game and completely rebuilding people's minds through the use of gameplay, I assume is an important chapter of you moving to land of Israel.
Well, you know something, it actually didn't start yet. I mean, the reality is that we moved to Israel. I'll tell you just a funny story, because this is how it always happens. And I heard this from Seth Godin. He says something like this. He says, look, in life, it's not about being prepared, it's being ready. Okay. You can never be enough prepared, but you could, say I'm ready, and then you're ready. And it's like that, if you're a parent out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't prepare for being a parent. You can be ready. And it was the same thing for going to Israel. To be honest with you, I thought that I had locked in a really good profession for coming to Israel. This is brand new in the world of coaching. It seemed like I was going to be working for a very cool coaching company, making anywhere from about $100 to $200 an hour, coaching people overseas. I'm like, that's a great way to start. My wife, Rachel, thought that she had the job of her dreams working in real estate. Someone who is a pretty high up there real estate creator in Israel basically said, when you come to Israel, you're on my team. And it was so interesting, because that little illusion of hope made me and Rachel feel like we were being responsible going to Israel, because we have things lined up for us. Meanwhile, pretty much within about, 60 days of showing up there, both things fell away. It's like the coaching school that I was supposed to be working with, that whole thing collapsed and fell through. I'm not even going to get into the reasons and the stories behind that. Rachel working for this real estate company, that was one of the worst experiences of her life. And she's been in real estate since then, by the way, but in a whole different spectrum, a whole different space. And that's been really amazing. But it was this illusion of responsibility that wound up getting us to Israel. And just to add one more thing also, in the first thing I did, I just got to share with you, I told you we did this whole curriculum for a living. We were really high level. We felt like we were Jewish Jedis showing up to Israel. We're like, God, what's next, baby? Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I told you the coaching thing fell away. Rachel's real estate thing fell away. And I had this idea, just because I'm really into the world, just like you are, right? We talked about this when we met the first time, into the world of health and wellness and fitness. So I had this idea about 9 years ago to come up with Israel Green Pages. It was going to be the yellow pages of the world of health and wellness. Made sense. I hired a company, spent about $12,000. They took about 15 months of my life, declared bankruptcy, and left me with absolutely no website and nothing. And I'm just like, looking up going, God, like, I made Aliyah for you. I mean, come on, come on. Are you kidding me? So humbling, so emasculating, not to mention the fact that my wife, grew up going to Yeshiva Flappa. She spoke really good Hebrew. I did not. I had not the type of Jewish education that one would hope for nowadays. And so there was a bunch of things that worked against me. Anyways, I wound up Rachel basically said to me, look, you got so good at finding us a place to live. Why don't you go into real estate now that Israel Green Pages is not working out? I said, okay. Again, this was 8 years ago. So the idea of being an English-speaking real estate agent, being yashar, having integrity, not having some Middle Eastern mentality, doing good stuff, seemed like a novelty to me, wink, wink. So got into the world of real estate. This was after 2008, the big crash happened. So we basically, thank God, we sold our place just in time in Queens, and we were looking to buy a place, and we chose a specific area in Jerusalem that was pretty much not the luxury living that everybody talks about. It was more like where real people live, by the Tayelet, an area called Armon HaNatziv by Arnona. And so I got into real estate. It took me 6 months to close my first deal. Rachel eventually joined me. We eventually were partners together for a couple of years. We moved probably about 150 families to this area and really built up our community. It's an awesome place to live now. But along the way, someone invited me out to come play this game-based workshop that would develop entrepreneurial, multidimensional thinking. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds interesting, speaks my language. I'll take Rachel for date night after sushi, So me and Rachel went out that night. It wound up being the first ever English FreshBiz workshop ever run. They had just translated literally the game from Hebrew to English. And man, it was huge. It was huge. It was a really deep experience I had, a really deep experience. It really just worked in my brain. I left, it kept working. I'm like, I am going to definitely be one of their first trainers for sure. And I became one of, let's say, their first 10 trainers in the world. Just put out, now we have close to about 200 and something. And just from being early, I wound up being chosen by Ronen Gafni, that actually created the game and sold his house to print the first 1,000 games and launch the company. I wound up being chosen by Ronen to co-found FreshBiz and take it global. And man, the rest is history. We could talk about that next. But that's really how I got into the world. It was this perfect sort of meeting of everything I've been, which is really an entrepreneur at heart, always blazing my own trail, doing things my way. Not because I have to do anything against someone else, but just because I just felt that was when I follow my intuition, which isn't necessarily, what everyone else is doing, that always leads me in the right direction. And so sort of piecing together entrepreneurship and game-based learning and the whole idea of self-development coaching and things like that was sort of how FreshBiz really met my mission.
So tell me a little bit about the game, and then please tell me a little bit about where you're going with the game and with the movement and with the mindset.
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you like this. One of the things that's so powerful for developing thinking of any sort is the power of experiences and the power of simulations. For example, you look at, for example, pilots. Pilots are not allowed to work for a commercial airline until they spend their first 2 months in full-time simulation, taking every possible worst case scenario, of course, in the safety of a simulation, but literally experiencing it. And it's the same thing for athletes. It's the same thing for gold medalists. It's the same thing for everything. So why wouldn't it be the same for brain-based science of business? And pretty much what FreshBiz is FreshBiz is a business simulation that we take people through a process of training their brain on how to think about innovation and creativity and what entrepreneurial thinking, which is the ability to turn ideas into reality, how you actually do that. Very often, one of the things that holds people back the most in business is they're so scared of failing or they're scared of success. Which is pretty much both sides of the same coin. And the reason why is because they don't have really any muscle memory in it. So if you're able to help people develop muscle memory around success, around risk and trying out new things and leverage and money and partnerships and everything like that in a business simulation, you do it enough times, you wind up becoming literally a business Jedi that then you just go out in your life and it's just a continuation of a larger simulation. What I'll tell you for now is just, so that's really what we've done. We basically created a business simulation and a whole series of workshops, a whole curriculum. We've taken over 50,000 people across close to, at this point, 30 countries through really epic training experiences. At this point now, we train companies like Tesla and Ernst & Young and Accenture and WeWork, Pfizer, IBM, et cetera. We're in a number of different MBA programs. We're actually doing something really cool right now for a Jewish high school, taking them through a senior entrepreneurship curriculum right now for their high school seniors. So we're just sort of in the space of educating people about how to play what we call a smarter, better, faster game of business, because a lot's changed. And I guess because this is a show that's primarily Jewish based, I'm going to share a little secret with you, which is the fact that I feel like a lot of what I'm doing through FreshBiz is very much getting people ready to the business environment of what it's going to look like really in the times of Mashiach, when things are just going to flow. Everything is going to be easy. Everything's going to be natural. You can call it synchronicity. You can call it singularity. You can call it whatever you want to call it, that people are calling it. But I know that in the Jewish world, we call it the times of the Mashiach. And things are going to be smart. They're going to flow. They're going to be easy. And that's really, in my mind, a lot of the training that we're going around the world, Jewish and not Jewish, getting people synced up to a whole new way of thinking about things.
So that's amazing. Do you find then that the limitations that we oftentimes find, and again, you went through this in your life, the idea of the boxing system that you mentioned in school, that is there a way, obviously your game does that, but you're working primarily in the corporate structure. Are there plans to help other people? How do we as people that might not have access to the game, how do we start to build that muscle of creativity? How do we get over that limitation of a fear of failure and that competitive, limited mindset that there's only like this amount of resources and that it's not going to go around? And if you do well, that means I'm not doing well. How do you nurture all of these very important mindsets?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I'm going to take the easy answer first, and then we can go a little deeper afterwards. But the easy answer is like this. We've been doing this now for 7 years. And thank God it took a while really to catch on. It took a while to be profitable, to have it be a business and not a hobby. And thank God it's really been the case like that now for a bunch of years. We're probably about 18 months away from coming out with a home version of the game. So God willing, the next 18 months, as opposed to families going out. What's that?
I said, you've got a solution for this. Good.
Yo, God willing, as opposed to families going out and buying games like Monopoly, which just reinforces the idea that we have to destroy everybody financially and play this zero-sum game of crazy competition where it's only about money and nothing else whatsoever, which, by the way, people legitimately look at games like it's just like some sort of like frivolous entertainment. They don't realize that you're actually training your brains. It's brain-based science, so it's the wrong way. So God willing, in about 18 months, we're going to have the FreshBiz game available for houses all over the world, and I hope people can really start to just play it and develop a whole new way of thinking. But as opposed to sort of owning this conversation and making it all about FreshBiz, which it's not, it's really about unlocking it for people in general. Look, a number of things have to change. Okay, we have to train our brains to think differently. I think the only way to do that is by doing it. In other words, whether it's, for example, doing online courses, whether it's, for example, actually going out and putting ourselves in transformational seminars and workshops that really go to the key, the essence of who we are, that shape their identity, so that we can essentially let go of a lot of the foreign stuff that's invading our head, just let it go. I think of, this is going to be in our second book that's called Entrepreneurship in the Torah. It'll be out, God willing, in the next about 12 to 18 months. Also, we talk a lot about literally the message of Avraham, the message of Abraham, and the whole idea of Lech Lecha, the idea of like literally stepping out. You have to go for yourself, right? Lech Lecha, you got to go for you. It's not about doing it because your mom and dad said so, because you're doing it for approval. That's not what it's about. But it's about, you got to get, out of your own area, out of the limiting beliefs of your household, out of the limiting beliefs of your land, and you got to go to where Hashem wants to show you. And like, that really is the message, I think, of entrepreneurial thinking. Unfortunately, a lot of the systems that we're still a part of right now are very old school. They really hold us back. They reinforce the same messaging that's been around for hundreds of years. It's really, really outdated. And we find ourselves asking questions like, well, how do we teach our graduates creativity? Well, maybe if we didn't educate it out of them in the first place, it would just be there for them. Well, how do we make Judaism more attractive? Well, maybe if we didn't show them some crazy thing that Judaism is unattractive, it would just be gorgeous, like how I think it is. I think it's the best blueprint in the entire world of how to be in deep alignment with the creation, with the creator, with the universe, with what's possible. So it's about being a part of different systems that I hope develop us to be better people, not just be like obedient people because it fits into some message or some larger, structure that's no longer relevant.
It's such a heartbreaking thing for me when I look at and this is something that I go through a lot. So maybe I'll utilize publicly your coaching, that there is sort of a perceived right and wrong. And I'll share very candidly, part of what happens in the game is when I was playing it for, you guys came and presented for NCSY at our regional convention. And it was fantastic. It was international and national convention, whatever it was. And the experience of, you can hire a coach, and the coach kind of came over, and I had been reading the rules one way the entire way and had built an entire strategy based on my reading of the rules. And the coach just asked a question like, was that what the rules say? And I went back and I was like, oh wait, no, that wasn't it. And something that has haunted me and is haunting me consistently is that there's this perception that in the Jewish world, you have to be one way. And, and I remember, like, very candidly, when I was in yeshiva, because I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today. And that experience of identifying with being this fat guy and then losing that, and then having the ability to walk through the world as someone that wasn't morbidly obese. I embraced this, like, I was proud and happy of the fact that I was like in good shape. And then in yeshiva, I remember someone saying like, oh, that's, totally not what God wants from you. And it's just, you're spending all your time for the wrong reasons. And that concept like really has kept through today, to the extent that I wrote a book about my experiences, and it's not a polished thing that I feel like at least the religious world is so into reading, that we want to read about our rabbis being absolutely perfect and never having any problems, and anything that actually implies like this reality ends up being like problematic, and we don't want to share that. We want to hush everything under the rug. How do you get comfortable sharing your story? And if you have done that, and like if in your experience, do you feel this like this wideness that you in your life where you can just kind of go wherever you want and not worry about it?
Man, that's an awesome question. I really have a lot of respect and appreciation for you on your journey too. I'll tell you like this, and this just comes down to the more that we clear out the stuff in our head, then the more authentic we could be as a person. I'm not trying to be authentic. I'm not trying to, there's no trying. It just comes from a place of flow, you know? And I think that that's really key. I think that when we let go of a lot of the stuff in our head, and again, it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. We have so much training in doing the wrong things with the wrong patterns. But I'll tell you like this, is that once we can clean out a lot of our inner baggage, then the authenticity shows up and we can share it. And I think that one of the most powerful experiences for me, Jacob, was being in a room with hundreds of people and every single person just sharing their story in terms of how they feel broken, they feel incomplete, they feel stupid, they feel dumb. And you watch some gorgeous people talking about how they feel ugly. You watch people with like 7 PhDs talking about how they still feel like they're the idiot that their older brother said to them when they were 6 years old. And it's like, well, you know, I'm on my 7th PhD. Maybe after I get 10, I'll have enough to prove that I'm actually worth it. And I'm smart. You watch people just do things from a place of weakness rather than from a place of strength. And I think that that was really powerful to realize, is that, man, each one of us has a story to share. Nobody's, you know, got it. No one's better. No one's fully made. Each one of us, literally, just to keep the game analogy going, each one of us is playing our own game. So by me sharing, you know, my deepest insecurities, well, guess what? Other people have their deep insecurities. It's probably around something totally different from mine. Maybe it's not, but there's something deeply humane and deeply human about the fact that, you know, we're all holding on to stuff, and we all, I think, you know, God would just love us to know that we're whole and complete. We can let it go, and we could just choose to go ahead and be our highest self. I think that's one of the greatest things that God introduced us, is the idea of tshuva. You know, this whole idea of pain and suffering, it's a Christian concept. It's a Gentile concept. It's not a Jewish concept. There is no pain and suffering in Judaism. That's wrong. It's false. There's no need for pain and suffering. There's just, we're out of alignment. Tshuva is, we raise the hay, we come back to alignment. We're back in touch. Hey, what's up, God? I'm back. I want to serve you. I want to connect with you. And I think there's no room for pain and suffering. You know, going back to what you were saying, if I could just add just 2 more principles, which I think are really key and really helpful, based on sort of what you mentioned about, oh, you know, now you're working out. I don't know if that's what God wants for you, right? You're spending all that time in the gym. Well, a couple things, right? It's like, really, our body is our temple. And I'm very into the world of health and wellness. When I feed my body right, then my brain works right. And I have higher level thoughts than when I'm eating junk and feeling like junk and treating my body like junk. Another thing that I think are two key elements I want to bring, just getting back to sort of Judaism, which needs to evolve in this way, or else we're going to lose a lot more people along the way. I know that this is what you're about in life. So 2 key things. One, and this is a longer story, but in order for me to have married my wife, Rachel made me submit my handwriting to her cousin, who was a world-renowned graphologist. It's a crazy story. We're not going to get into more details than that right now, but it's a crazy story.
I'm glad my wife didn't submit me to that kind of stuff. I don't know what I would have done.
You have no idea. I spent days thinking if I'm even going to send my handwriting, because you got to see how I write. I mean, it's so messy and so crazy and so nuts. I'm like, there's no way that anybody's going to say good things about this. He wound up actually looking at Rachel, looking at my handwriting, going, "Mazel tov." And Rachel just broke down crying. Wow. It was just nuts. But anyways, we'll get there a different time. But one of the things, when I actually had a call with Rav Chaim Lifshitz, he said to me, he said, "Simcha, I just want to tell you something. From your handwriting, you are not a leader." And I'm like, okay, I'm not a follower. Like, I just don't feel like that's relevant for me. He's like, "You are not a follower. Is there more, you know?" Right. And we're so used to this binary game. It's either a 0 or 1. He goes, "You are independent. So if people follow you, cool, but you don't care. You just do your own thing when it makes sense." And a couple things, the Judaism that we're living in right now in 2017, Jacob, we're living in a generation of independence. Everybody's an independent nowadays. Everybody. So what do you do in a world where everyone's an independent? How do you control them? That's one of the biggest conversations. And the second key principle, now that we're living in a world of independence, is, this is so key in the world of FreshBiz, in our game, in our book, The New Entrepreneurz, but we talk a lot about the fact that this generation, it's no longer about paid points. You can't come from a place of fear anymore. If you don't do this, you're going to go right to hell, you know, That doesn't work anymore. You got to come from a place of opportunity. You got to come from a place of experience. You got to show people that I want to connect to Judaism. You know, I grew up where in yeshiva, and sorry to get really Jewish for a second, but I grew up in a yeshiva where they were, you know, I had to wear a hat and jacket for davening every single time I was in like prayer. I had to wear a hat and jacket. Had to, because if I wasn't, it was all this like fear-based approach. And they would say things like, remember, even minhagim, even customs you have to keep, because minhag spelled backwards is Gehenim. You don't want to go right to hell for not keeping a tradition. And it was just like, oh my God, like this whole idea of this fear-based approach that might've worked in Panovich like 200 years ago. I get it if that's all you know, but I think that the new generation, this evolution of consciousness, certainly Jew, Gentile, whatever the case, but definitely with the Jewish people is, man, we're all independent thinkers, and you have to come from a place of love and from a place of opportunity and not from a place of fear, because fear doesn't attract anybody. It doesn't inspire anybody. It actually makes people run away. I'd rather go to places where there is no fear. I could just do. So the Judaism of today is a Judaism about love, appreciation, and real opportunity. I think that's really key for what's next for our young people, basically, is to show them and to give them that sort of perspective.
And I think that the easiest way to do that is to find that within yourself, I guess, and practice that and go through, just to summarize what I think you had mentioned, that the experience of going and doing it over and over and over again, and forgiving yourself and loving yourself and reaching out to people that you're not necessarily comfortable to reach out to, and realize that they're just kind of people too. Because I think that was my methodology and my thinking behind the podcast, was that the podcast offers us this amazing opportunity to literally listen into two people's discussions. And that's always more interesting, because you see that there's a humanity there, that when a person gets up on a podium and gives a speech, there's no back and forth, there's no questions and deep diving and hearing about their struggles. I mean, yeah, now, you go to any speakers convention, they'll teach you about how to be, like you said, like how to be authentic and how to share your story, but there's nothing more connecting. There's no greater feeling of connectivity than when you can really see that person's own pain, that person's own experience. And I feel like that's a major area of salvation for our people, because the Jewish people have so much to offer. And again, that whole idea that Abraham, his children like the stars. And one of my favorite explanations of that was that from far away, a star looks very small, but you get close and it's like this fiery ball of energy. And he's saying that's how kind of the people are, is that the closer you get to a person, you see they have this whole world going on within them. And the more you can see that, the greater you can get close to them, and that elevates you as well. So I guess, I don't know, I was riffing a little bit over there, but I think that is crucial. Your thoughts?
No, that was great. I would just add one element. You mentioned it before in the game, which was, the idea of hiring coach, which is, man, it's hard to develop this by yourself, but I will tell you that, thank God, there are some great rabbis out there, and just because someone has a title rabbi doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right one for you. It's just like, there's a lot of people that have the title doctor in front of their name. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go see them. That's not necessarily what I look for. Just someone that has, some letters in front of their name. It's the same thing with rabbis. And at this point now, you really can find exactly who you're looking for to be your role model, to be your leader, to be your rabbi. That's really key. That's really key.
Beautiful. So where can people find you, hear more about you? What else? What can we do for you to get your message out there?
Wow. Thanks so much. A couple of things. One, my name is Simcha Gluck, Gluck. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. If I could be a resource in any way, either through our workshops, through our keynote talks, trainings, whatever, it's my pleasure. I'm also going to show you, you mentioned before, I do have a copy over here.
Please do. There it is.
This is the new Entrepreneurz. I'm pretty excited about it. It's on Amazon, it's on Audible, it's on Kindle. We actually just got to 100 5-star reviews. I'm really excited about that. It's resonating with people all across the planet. So wow. I'd love for it to resonate with you. And if you want to send me an email or you want to reach out, I have a fun little trick in terms of how you can actually download the version for free if you want to do that too. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. Our website is freshbizgame.com, freshbizgame.com. And that's a snapshot regarding what we do with our game, with our talks, with our content. But man, there's so much more to go. There's so much more to go. You know this, Jacob. All the best entrepreneurs out there, they love what they're doing. They're never going to quit. It's not about retirement. It's about really being here, being the best vessel for us to deliver our messages that we possibly can. So where this goes to and evolves, I have no concept. But I'm just really loving just being out there and showing up.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time. There you have it, folks. Another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.